Welcome back to another rousing episode of Grudge Match, the show where our favorite characters throw down and find out who's left standing when the smoke clears. Today's episode finds us examining the mystical realms and pitting the two champions of the occult against each other. DC is bringing the helmeted hero Dr. Fate against Marvel's Sorcerer Supreme, Doctor Strange. Now, starting off and examining Dr. Fate, he originally appeared before Doctor Strange. By a good margin. He first showed up in comics back in 1941, but though he did appear a good deal before Doctor Strange has appeared in comics a lot more frequently. Dr. Fate only appeared sporadically for the first few decades of his existence. Sometimes there'd be years, even decades, in between one comic and the next where you finally see him again. And also, Dr. Fate it's a title rather than a proper name for a person. It's passed down from person to person, and there's been more than half a dozen Dr. Fates over the years. But the most famous is the original Dr. Fate, Kent Nelson, who found the Helmet of Nabu, Nabu being an ancient Egyptian sorcerer and supposedly the best sorcerer to ever live in the DC universe. And whenever Kent Nelson would put on the helmet, it would allow Nabu to either instruct him and give him his powers, or occasionally Nabu could actually possess and take control of Nelson and act through him. So either way, whether Nabu was controlling him or just advising him, it gave Nelson access to very high levels of magical powers. And using these powers, Dr. Fate was a member of the Justice Society of America for several years, and has been in prominence a lot more lately in the last decade or so of comics over at DC. Dr. Strange, on the other hand, started off in 1963 is when he first appeared, and unlike Dr. Fate, where there were up to 8 or 9 different Dr. Fates throughout the years, there's only ever been one Dr. Strange, and it is actually his name, it's not a title, Stephen Strange. And his story was he was a neurosurgeon, and he was a very gifted one. He was the best in the business, but he was in an accident and his hands got crunched and broken. And no matter how many surgeries or treatments he tried, he could never get his hands to work right again, so his career was effectively over. So one time, in one attempt to try to fix his hands, he met the Ancient One, who was at that time the Sorcerer Supreme of Earth, and he wanted to train under him, specifically in hopes of getting the use of his hands back. And ultimately he ended up becoming his best student, the Ancient One's best student, and a great practitioner of mystic arts, abandoned his quest to become a neurosurgeon again, and just became a full-fledged sorcerer, and eventually going on to succeed the Ancient One in becoming the Sorcerer Supreme. And Doctor Strange has been around very consistently in Marvel Comics ever since his debut, and is most notably a member of the Avengers currently. Now, when it comes to the powers of these two characters, it's really hard to compare them because basically they can do anything. Both of them have virtually any power they need because that's the way sorcerism and these mystical powers and spells work in the comic universes. Anything they need to do at any given time, they have spells to do them. So we're talking energy manipulation, matter manipulation, time manipulation. They can alter the very fabric of reality around them. They can go onto the astral plane. They can have various psychic powers. Anything they need, they can do through the use of their magic. Now, they both have magical artifacts that increase their powers as well. Dr. Fate has most notably the Helmet of Fate, of course, and he also uses the Amulet of Anubis, Cloak of Destiny, and occasionally various other things that extend the abilities that he normally has. Dr. Strange, same deal. He has artifacts that increase his powers as well. Most notably the Eye of Agamotto, Cloak of Levitation, Wand of Watum. But these things are just tools to allow them to extend their power. Even without any of these artifacts, they both still have a wide assortment of magical powers. So, when it comes down to who would beat the other, it's really kind of a toss-up, because at any given time, they can both use their powers to do anything. So the only way to really determine who would come out on top if these two were to ever fight really comes down to who has better mastery and control over their magical powers. And the way to determine that is who has the best experience and knowledge. So based on that, we can determine a winner, and that winner is going to be Doctor Strange. The reason behind that is that when it comes to removing, absolutely stripping these two characters down of their magical artifacts, no Eye of Agamotto for Doctor Strange, no Helmet of Fate for Dr. Fate, suddenly Dr. Fate loses a lot of his magical knowledge. Once you take that helmet off of him, all those experiences and information and knowledge that he gets from Naboo when Naboo is advising him is gone. Now, Kent Nelson still has a good deal of magical power on his own without the helmet, but like I say, a lot of that experience is suddenly gone. Versus Doctor Strange, you might think that, well, with the Helmet of Fate and all that experience that comes from Naboo, Dr. Fate would be the clear leader because of how old Naboo is and how much experience he's had. But something that few people know, Doctor Strange is actually thousands of years old at this point. And that happened because he gets a lot of his power by invoking the name of deities and interdimensional demons and creatures who lend them his power. And at one point, those entities came a-calling. They wanted to get some help from him in what was known as the War of Seven Spheres. Now, this was a mystical war that went on another plane of existence between mystical entities and gods and deities and demons and all kinds of things, and they all wanted to use Doctor Strange as a soldier for them. He initially didn't want to do it, but eventually he did go and fight in the War of the Seven Spheres for them, and that lasted thousands of years on another plane of existence. And then when it was over and he came back to Earth, only about a year had passed. So he's actually thousands of years old. He has thousands of years of magical experience using his magic in wartime scenarios against gods and goddesses and deities and demons. So he knows exactly what he's doing. And even if you take away all of his toys, his Eye of Agamotto, Wand of Watum, get rid of all of it, he still has every bit of that experience and knowledge of how to use all of his magical abilities to their fullest. Dr. Fate, you take away all of his toys, especially Helmet of Fate, and he loses all of that. He still has some raw power on his own, he still can do a lot of magic on his own, but he loses the experience and the knowledge that came along with the helmet. So based on that, and really that alone, because that's really the only thing that separates these two characters when it comes to their powers and abilities, is that Doctor Strange will always have his experience and knowledge of how to use his powers no matter what. Versus Dr. Fate, you take the helmet off and he loses his. That and that alone brings Doctor Strange to the forefront of this match and has him as the winner of this grudge match. So let me know what you think of this outcome or any suggestions for future grudge matches, and we'll see you next time on the next edition of Grudge Match.